good afternoon to everyone who are joining us from Asia and Middle East, and a very good morning to all those who are joining from Europe and London. Welcome to the first of the 3 panel in our web series titled Digitizing for Growth in ASEAN. I'm being told that we have participants from 13 countries joining us today, which is simply fantastic. This unprecedented time is fast turning into a new normal as people and businesses across the globe are quickly adapting to the COVID and the post-COVID environment. And it's a well-known fact that every crisis brings new opportunities. And in my view, digitization is the best opportunity that has come up in the current COVID pandemic. This is not new. Digitization was already top of mind for most of our clients. And in the past 6 months, we have seen this trend accelerate exponentially. Also, why focus on ASEAN today? The simple reason is, while digitization is already a big trend globally, this is far more evident in the ASEAN region, where almost every country has now launched a wide range of new digital payment and collection solutions. And we are also seeing a dramatic shift in consumer preference away from cash and checks and more towards these new digital solutions. Standard Chartered is the only bank with presence in all 10 ASEAN markets and is investing heavily in new standardized digital solutions across ASEAN to bring a lot of consistency and standardization to our clients as well. We do aspire to be the best bank in ASEAN. And to do this, we do need to stay connected with our clients and to our people despite the current situation, supporting our clients through good times and through tough times. So let's move on to the conversation today with our esteemed panelist, which is going to be an interesting one as we dive into possibilities and opportunities to examine new digital strategies that businesses can build on. I'm very excited to introduce our panelist today for the session. So first up, we have Khairwan Abdul Rahman, who is the Director of Retail Payment Services, PayNet Malaysia. And he has been instrumental in rolling out a lot of new digital solutions in the Malaysian market. Khairwan. We also have with us David Wijeratne, who is the Growth Market Center Leader for Pricewaterhouse Singapore. Welcome, David. Thank you for joining. Third, I'm pleased to introduce Noni Purnomo, who is President Director for Bluebird Group Indonesia, who has also been named CEO and Digital Transformer at the recent IDC Digital Transformation Awards Indonesia. Congratulations, Ibu Noni, and thank you for joining us. And finally, our moderator for the panel is going to be Jessica Fawn from Transaction Banking of Standard Chartered. And Jessica has closely worked with a number of clients in the retail and consumer-led industries. With that, I will pass it on to you, Jessica. Thank you once again, panelists. Thank you, audience, for joining us, and hope you enjoy the session today. Over to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Uncle. I believe most of the audience are joining this live webinar from home. COVID-19 pandemic has indeed changed our ways of working. It has also accelerated the digital transformation across the industries. With that, I would like to start our first poll question. While the poll result is coming in, I would like to ask our panelists for their views on how has the pandemic changed the customer-facing sectors such as retail, consumer, and transportation, and what were the first response to it? David, perhaps you can share with us your view from an ASEAN perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you very much for having me on this afternoon. I think it's pretty well understood what an impact COVID-19 had over the last 6 months and 9 months on all industries. I think if we look at the retail, consumer, transportation sectors, it's not just the consumer-facing elements that were impacted. I think you've seen impacts all the way through the value chain, which then ultimately does impact how a retailer perhaps engages with the consumer. I think one of the key things that we saw success or challenges was the communication. As soon as retailers were having to perhaps shut down physical stores, how were they communicating with their consumers? Were they able to stay in touch, update, inform? I think those that were able to successfully do that through obviously digital platforms and regularly maintain that in a variety of different tones were those that seemed to manage to maintain engagement and maintain experience. And I think that's what I'll come back to, because I think that was absolutely critical as people were confined, the circuit breaker in Singapore at least, confined to home. But then all the way through, if you think about the relationships that were held with suppliers, how were those relationships tested? Because as we know in this region, a lot is, is emphasized on the relationship between a wholesaler and supplier. But I think those relationships were really tested to of relationship versus reliability. And I think that's opened up a whole question there as to those relationships that actually could deliver. It could actually come through in times of challenging and were reliable or resilient, or actually they were just a relationship. And I think that has opened up, again, an area of opportunity for other suppliers that perhaps are more reliable but weren't part of a value chain, but now can be part of a value chain by showing how they are perhaps more digitally enabled to withstand challenging times and be more resilient. And I think going through the value chain delivery, of course, as we then moved to being confined to homes, we're expecting things to come to us rather than us going to certain points of sale. Again, communication, setting expectation, managing the experience. I think that was critical to success. And obviously, that last mile delivery in any e-commerce business is always the most challenging part of the value chain, and how that was managed, given also the strains on the last mile, because so many people were looking for that last mile support. I think, again, communication, setting expectations, again, through whether it was through your SMS or whether you're getting emails or whether you're getting connections. I think people felt that, that you were being cared for as long as you set their expectations. And then finally, payments. I think that's one of the biggest changes, as people have moved towards, as they ordered and as they paid for things, through a digital channel. Those who are not familiar with that, perhaps if you look at those who are a little bit more mature in age and quite like to, trust then you're handing over money to get a good. Now we're confined to home and having to rely on a new medium, going through digital channel to procure. I think, again, how companies were able to understand that the demographic was different. Those that were historically good customers who would use a certain digital e-commerce platform, there were new customers to that platform. How did you engage and manage that sort of demographic? And again, some of those new consumers to the e-commerce channel, they will be retained. Those that will retain them are those that actually manage to engage well with them. So I think those are some of the sort of challenges and what I think work well across some of those sectors. But again, I come back to two areas: good experience, good communication, the development of trust and reliability. I think these were things that people those who were successful quickly realized was important to success and will carry them forward. I think one of the things that I also referred to earlier was that point about suppliers. I think what we have gone through has broken relationships, historic relationships that perhaps were through the value chain for years. I think that point of, as I mentioned, between relationship and reliability has now been called into question. It's great that you've worked with me for so many years, but if I can't rely on you, for therefore my consumers to rely on myself, then what is the value of this relationship? And I think that has really tested it, and it's now let new suppliers come into the mix and break into value chains that they weren't necessarily able to do so before.
Thank you, David. In fact, I just got the poll results, and it showed that majority of our audience are not quite there yet. Well, I'll say that you are in the right live webinar, because we have all the star panelists here to share with you all the digital toolkits that they have implemented And of course, they'll be able to share with you some of the advice or tips when you are embarking on your digital transformation journey. All right, now let's review the transportation sector. Transportation sector is one of the hardest hit sectors in Indonesia. According to the Indonesian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, the transportation sector experienced a 50% decline in revenue after the pandemic spread to the country. Despite the many challenges faced, Bluebird, the Indonesian taxi group, has been actively looking for ways to expand their range of services. Now, Ibu Noni, would you tell us more about Bluebird COD, chat order delivery, and bird Kirim?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to this event to share about our experience. I think as Ankur mentioned, and also emphasis again by David, that this is an era where we all have to be really agile. I mean, Bluebird has been around for 48 years, and I could say that this is one of the hardest hit that a company could get, right? I mean, it is actually, the average is 50%, but taxi industry, a lot of the taxi industry were completely collapsed. And we actually got hit quite significantly in April. And so on that time, in March, when the pandemic started to affect Indonesia, we straight away think of a way on how to survive. Of course, first, as we all have to do, we need to make sure that our financial condition is in a good health condition, right? Healthy condition. But what next? How do we manage between managing the current crisis and still preparing for the future? And how do we see opportunities within the chaotic situation? I think David also mentioned that we learned that there was a surge in needs of last mile delivery, and yet people or even the infrastructure was not ready to give that surge of demand. So in that sense, because we already have our fleets out there on the street, and we already have the system, so we needed to be more agile in extending our already trusted service, not just for people, but also for goods. So that's how the COD was born, and also bird Kirim. So on that time, I remember in March, we all had a meeting, and I said to the IT team, I said, you got 2 sprints, only 2 sprints to get this done and put it in my Bluebird. So everybody's like, oh, but that's what we needed to be able to be agile and just grab the opportunity, try to look at things better than, beyond our imagination. So we launched our COD, chat order and delivery, because we know people like to do chattings, and we launched bird Kirim both on the first week and second week of April. And within less than 3 weeks, I think we got quite a high attraction on that time. Within less than 3 weeks, we straight away got about 5,000 orders, which is very, very good for us on that time, because otherwise we were like down, almost no orders. That was really, really good. So it helps us a lot. Yes, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of calculations and discussion, but we needed to survive. And another part is we see the opportunities. A lot of people could stay at home, and that's the reason why our passenger transport is down. But people still need to get some food. People still need to get their staple needs, right? Like shampoo, the household needs, even food. So with our trusted services, a lot of our customers, they want to have their food being delivered in a very hygienic way. That's how COD got the attraction, because we own our assets. Every single day our drivers comes to our office, so we can manage their health, the hygiene and everything. So that enhanced the trust from our customers.
Wow, this is really impressive, and indeed agility. All right, now let's look at Malaysia landscape. Hairuan, with the rapid migration from brick and mortar stores to online, coupled with the change in consumer behaviors, what is the adoption rate of instant payments between pre-COVID-19 and now? Or has the digital payment landscape in Malaysia changed drastically, or not at all?
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah. And Standard Chartered Bank for having me today at Digitising for Growth in ASEAN virtual event. Yeah. So allow me to introduce Payments Network Malaysia, or PayNet, a little bit. Yeah. So PayNet Malaysia Premier Payments Network and Central Infrastructure for Financial Markets. Central Bank of Malaysia, or Bank Negara Malaysia, is our single largest shareholders, and 11 Malaysian banks as joint shareholders. Yeah. Then, I think our vision is empowering Malaysia digital economy. That's one. And also our mission is to be entrusted enabler of inclusive and collaborative financial ecosystem. So that little bit of background about my company, PayNet. Yeah. So yes, we are living through quite extraordinary times. The COVID-19 pandemic is having dramatic effect on economic around the world. Yeah, not just ASEAN, impacting our employment, businesses, and household as well. So COVID hit us in March, and 3 weeks, March this year, yeah, and 3 weeks later, we noticed the e-commerce transaction blew up in a big way, yeah, in Malaysia. It went to a new plateau and it never get down, yeah. So that's pretty interesting for us to look at the data. From FPX perspective, which is FPX is the National Payment Gateway Malaysia, yeah. It owned and also operates by PayNet. The volume grew to more than 100%. As compared to last year during the same period. Yeah. The key drivers include the strong e-commerce growth driven by cross-border spending by online shoppers. Yeah. Higher volume driven by various online shopping campaigns like 778899. In fact, tomorrow is 11/11 day. Don't forget to shop. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about the landscape. That's from the e-commerce perspective. We also noticed that from the online fund transfer, is also growing. It's happening during the COVID as well. Yeah, payments seem resilient in Malaysia, so we continue to see substantial growth in Do It Now. So Do It Now is a fund transfer riding on the real-time rail in Malaysia. Yeah. So the industry continue working with sectorial use cases. Promoting payout or refund from government industries, insurance, even logistic industry. Yeah. Pay utilities via their proxy, where there is also a strong use case for QR. Yeah. In Malaysia, we have launched Do It Now QR, which is the Malaysia National QR, which provides QR code standardization. I think in Malaysia, in Thailand, they have PromptPay, similar concept to Do It Now QR as well. Yeah. Increase in Indonesia. Yeah. All right, so for Do It Now QR, it provides interoperability, started to grow towards this quarter. We noticed that as well, yeah. And also admission of the non-bank into a real-time payments platform, or RAIL. We hope will further accelerate growth in the introduction of phase 2 of real-time payments platform is happening next month. So in Malaysia, we are launching a few more new services. Focusing to the corporate industry, we would have request to pay, real-time debit, and consent. So this all happening next month. Jessica, over back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I will remember to do online shopping tomorrow. Yeah, in fact, prior to COVID-19 pandemic, there was already a cashless race across the markets in ASEAN. Because of the current pandemic environment, this has accelerated the digital agenda across industries in this region. In Standard Chartered, we have launched various digital payment and collection solutions like instant payments, current QR code collections, online payment gateway, API, and request to pay across key ASEAN markets to help corporates achieve their digital initiatives. With that in mind, let's hear from the audience. Please click on the poll function now for poll question number 2. What do you think is lacking in the current digital toolkit? Instant payments, QR code collections, real-time direct debit, online payment gateway, API, or I'm unsure. While waiting for the poll results to come in, I would like to hear from Ibu Noni. Her plans to accelerate the digital payment system to be less cash reliant in Indonesia. Over to you, Ibu Noni.
Yes, thank you. Indonesia is inherently still finding it a challenge to really move toward cashless payment, because Indonesians are still relying a lot on cash. I mean, even the number of people who owns a bank account are very limited as Standard Chartered experience as well. So, but we have been doing a lot of improvement in moving toward cashless society. And in Bluebird, we have been pioneering this as well. And for example, in Bali, our operations in Bali, we are moving really toward almost 100%. It's about 75% now cashless, even within the driver activity as well. So, and within Bluebird also, our relationship with our customers, every time we introduce new multi-payment system. So our aim to be able to have a platform that invites multi-payment in using or paying our services. So at this moment, we work together with several e-payment companies. And also, for example, with Standard Chartered to do the cash collections for our even cash drivers revenue, right? So we're trying to manage everything as cashless as possible by collaborating. So we provide the infrastructure, we provide the open API. So in My Bluebird now, you can pay with, of course, our own e-voucher. You can pay by any type of credit cards and Link Aja, for example. And also in our vehicle, we already put Chris, the Indonesian QR ID.
Yeah, thanks for the partnership with Standard Chartered, Ibu Noni. All right, we spoke about instant payments just now, and we have Duit Now in Malaysia and Pay Now in Singapore with a wider scope of instant payments. Karan, can you tell us more about instant cross-border payments and what does this mean for consumers and corporates alike? I think this is quite new for some of our audience here. Perhaps, we would like to hear from you.
All right. Well, I mentioned about Do It Now earlier. Yeah, it is an instant funds transfer. It's launched in 2018, leveraging on the multi-year plan in modernizing Malaysia retail payment infrastructure. So allowing sender to send money to a proxy ID, such as a mobile number, national ID, business registration, and even passport number for foreigners. Yeah. So we talk about the cross-border payments experience should be no different to a real-time domestic payment. Okay. Then, for cross-border, started with Do It Now QR, which allowing Malaysia to make purchases by scanning QR at our neighboring countries. Of course, now the border is closed, so we hope that the banks, move from the physical scanning into the online scanning. Yeah, so that's happening as well. With strong support from Bank of Thailand, Bank of Indonesia, along with Bank Negara Malaysia, we are focusing to roll out our cross-border with Thailand in December next year, December this year, as a pilot. Yeah. And after that, we're looking at to launch it with Indonesia, Chris, and also Singapore Pay Now, and also India, also in pipeline. So all this will be happening in 2021. Indonesia will happen in December this year, but despite the border is closing. Yeah. So that is a little bit of, I hope I answered the question, Jessica, on the cross-border. Yeah, okay.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and thanks for sharing that with the audience here. And also another observation that we have is the faster adoption of digital commerce for retail, consumer, and transportation sectors. Digital commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services using the internet, mobile networks, and also commerce infrastructure. And we have implemented these 6 use cases across ASEAN. Use case number 1 is the e-commerce collections using dynamic QR code. At the point of payment checkout, your customer will select the payment method on our Straight to Bank Pay page, and then a dynamic QR code will be generated for customers to scan and pay online. I think most of the audience must have seen this, this type of capabilities in some part of the ASEAN markets. Yeah? If you have very short time frame to implement a digital solution, then I would suggest use cases 5 and 6 are the solutions that can be implemented fast with zero integration costs. If you are keen to know more about these use cases, do reach out to us. We will share with you how these use cases were implemented for our clients. All right, let's look at the poll results for question number 2. Yeah. Most of our audience responded that API is lacking in their current digital toolkit. In fact, I'm not surprised with the result because we have seen that currently more and more corporates are using API connectivity compared to those days. They use API connectivity to enable continuous data exchange and seamless integration between their systems, their ERP system, and the banks to support transaction and reporting. This gives corporates real-time visibility over their available cash and liquidity. And this is becoming more and more popular because we have received a lot of queries from our clients about API connectivity. All right, apart from the digital strategy to build business pipelines, should corporates look into new market expansion? And if so, David, what kind of growth strategy that should corporates consider?
I think as companies move along a journey, and I think Standard Chartered has been has very well documented this road to resilient growth, this series that you have promoted the last 6 months. That it is a journey. It's a journey, from recover to repair through to remanaging, rethinking before you replan to a new market. I think a lot of tactical, inward-looking strategies has been the focus. But as those people, companies start to begin to think about how they grow, they're going to be thinking about two things in particular: rebalancing and resilience, and they are different. The rebalance was a feture. If I look at the whole value chain, pre-COVID, people were thinking about, where was the best source of supplies, whether that was because of trade tensions or whether that was just pure value. People were already looking at how to source and looking at portfolios. I think that's going to continue. So that's opened up. But what COVID has also done is, as I look for new suppliers, I'm also looking at rebalancing. I'm looking at where can I be able to be sourced from, the proximity, as well as the resilience. That's, I think, the second part of it. So the two of those going hand in hand as you reevaluate the cross-border from a supply perspective. New markets, it's I think gone are the days of pure profit growth, pure focus on profitable growth. I think one of the things that the last 6-9 months has really driven home is the need for sustainable growth, resilient growth, and that may come at an initial cost to the pure profit or the bottom line. But is it resilient? Is it for the long run? Can it withstand shocks to the system like COVID-19? Like, there will be other shocks to our business. We live in a continuous disruptive world, and that is just the world we're living in. It was there before COVID, it's going to be there now, post-COVID. I think people have just realized and have accepted it. That is the world we live in now. And so our business models have to change from being pure profit orientated to being resilient and profit orientated. And that's a slight shift. That does mean that certain companies will have to build in a certain element of redundancy. What I mean by that, you might carry inventory, for example, to make sure you can serve your best customers, whilst you then eventually start to become more digitally enabled and reduce that dependency on redundancy. So I think, for the likes of Standard Chartered, who are able to introduce and vet and international partners, I think now is a time where people are looking at their portfolios of suppliers as well as new markets to grow, surrounded by this point of rebalance and resilience.
Yeah. And therefore, right now, a lot of organizations, they're looking at digital transformation. And of course, just now, based on the response from the audience, is that they are not quite there yet. So now, here we come to this, we would like to this question. Well, the time to invest in digital solutions is now. Before we wrap up the panel discussion, I would like to invite our star panelists to provide some advice or tips for a successful digital transformation. Let's start with Ibu Noni.
Thank you, Jessica. I think a lot of people, when we talk about digital transformation, the first thing that comes out in our mind is technology. Digital transformation for me and for us at Bluebird is beyond just the technology change, right? I think we should look at it from the change of mindset. Because a lot of times, okay, we talk about being agile and things like that, but what is agility? We need to change our mindset. We need to be able to see beyond the boundaries. I think that is digital transformation. So, and how, I think, I like what David said, it's about sustainable growth. because sustainable growth needs to be driven by purpose. It's the bigger purpose. It is not just short-term profit. We need to find a bigger purpose first in order for us to be sustainable. And so digital transformation for us also means that we need to focus on 3 pillars. One, again, as I mentioned earlier, is about the people and organization itself, about the mindset change. And the second one is the IT fundamentals, because it is very important. We cannot deny that digital transformation needs good IT fundamentals. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And then the third one is the digital innovations itself. Technology is an enabler. I think that's the thing that we really need to keep in mind. So at the end of the day, digital transformation and adoption should always be centered around people. It is for the purpose of the betterment of individuals and for the sustainability of the company itself.
Well said, Ibu Noni. Yeah. And how about Kyron? You may want to share some observation or feedback that you have received from corporates.
It is interesting. You know, corporate do not want to be chasing payments either because they haven't arrived or because reconciliation is a struggle for them. Yeah. So likewise, corporate want to make payments as late as possible. I think we know that. Yeah. Massive sum even they wish to hold on to that money for as long as possible, earning that free money in interest. Yeah. So business and their finance team also want that experience of being on the phone with the supplier and be able to pay them there and then too. Yeah. So I think therefore there's a real-time payments with the real-time feedback loops are inevitable. This need for real-time though is not a geographic specific one, rather it is seen globally in all jurisdictions. So I think for the audience today, yeah. I believe that SCB, Standard Chartered Bank, has all the tools to assist the corporates to move to digital. So do talk to Standard Chartered Bank today. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Karan. Yeah, and how about David? Any other tips that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I mean, I think I would just add that in this, one of the things that COVID-19 has done is it has accelerated the move towards digitalization. I think I agree on that. But I think what corporates need to be aware of is that it's not the only solution. It's not the only answer. I think there is a danger that people, okay, I need to digitalize. I need to digitalize my business. I need to digitally upskill all my staff. And I think there's a danger there of missing some of the critical aspects of what will be needed for success in the longer term. Of course, digitalization is going to grow. It is needed for success. However, I think to be truly successful, you need to look into your business and think, what are the skills my staff need for the rest of their careers? Some of them will need to be digitally enabled and digitally skilled, but some will not. Some will need other skills to deal with the new normal that we're heading into. So I think whilst digitalization is important to aspects, it's not necessarily needed across the whole operating model. So that's something. Where is it appropriate and the skills? And then the last thing is the acceleration of digitalization brings risk. If you do anything quickly, that it's open to mistakes or leaving yourself open to risk. So with enhanced digitalization must come that element of enhanced diligence and governance to protect against threat and also the misuse of technology.
Yeah, well said, David. Yeah. Let me also share some additional tips. I used to work in corporates prior to joining Standard Chartered, and based on my personal experience, these are the 5 key success factors for any transformation projects. First one, strong support from senior management. Second, early engagement with internal stakeholders to share the vision, seek for feedback, and obtain their buy-in. Third one, early engagement with your external stakeholders, for example, suppliers and customers to drive the change. Fourth, experienced banking and technology partners who can provide guidance and share best practices throughout the journey. Last but not least, an end-to-end implementation plan with clear project timelines and responsibilities. And also, in the recent years, we noticed that more and more corporates, they are receptive to the idea of with the banking partners and the fintech companies. A note to our audience, if you're keen to co-create any digital solutions, you can reach out to us. We do have the expertise and experience in this area, and we have won multiple awards throughout the client co-creation. All right, I think it's now time for Q&A session, and we shall now look at the question posted by our audience. Before that, I would like to invite Anko to join the Q&A section as well. The first question, online payment has been proven to be the preferred option for the end customers. If we compare it with card-based payments, how the bank can help this transformation for companies that would like to give these options to their clients? Perhaps, Uncle, you may want to take this question.
Sure, Jessica. I think you kind of covered this, Jessica, when you were showing the slide. But the long and short of it is there is a huge amount of technology now available which can actually support our clients collect and pay digitally through online payment gateways. Okay, so at Standard Chartered, like you mentioned earlier, we've already rolled out a full-fledged online payment gateway across most of the ASEAN major markets. And like you covered earlier, there are different sort of use cases on how to use that gateway. For clients who are actually willing to do some level of integration with the bank, we can actually enable all the different payment methods onto your portal itself. So as and when your customers get into your portal, buy goods from you, at the checkout page, they get routed to a Standard Chartered payment gateway, and they're able to see a wide variety of payment methods that are most popular in the country. Whereas for clients who do not like a lot of integration, as Jessica, you covered earlier, there are more simpler options available as well. So there is a new solution that we rolled out specifically because of the COVID pandemic, because many clients did not want integration. The solution is called Payment Link, which simply says, forget about any integration. I, as a bank, will now generate a dynamic QR for my client, and you can actually send that QR to your underlying consumers via email, via SMS, via invoices, or whatever other means that you want. And for your underlying consumers, as and when they scan the QR, they will again be routed to the same Standard Chartered payment gateway, and they'll be able to see all different payment options on how they can execute a payment. So the long and short of it is there are many different methods available in terms of technology of how we can enable this for you. As Jessica mentioned, we are happy to sit down and co-create with you. So feel free to reach out to your Standard Chartered representative and happy to take it forward together with you.
Yeah, thank you, Uncle. And here we have another question. For ASEAN markets, apart from Singapore, traditional means of banking and payments remain more popular. What are the corporates and regulators' view on educating the customer to transform the cash-based payment? Perhaps I'll go to Ibu Noni first. How do you educate your customer to transform the cash-based payments?
I think at this moment it's automatically, I think it's accelerated by the needs of physical distancing and low touch economy. So that by itself help out, right? But I think the one of the key success factor for the adoption of cashless payment is actually the whole infrastructure and the whole what do you call it, the environment itself. So for example, this is a real example for our drivers. If our drivers take a cashless payment, if then during lunchtime, our drivers needed to go and have lunch, and our drivers still need to use cash to pay for his lunch. So if this whole thing is not closed, the loop, the infrastructure, the whole environment is not being closed, it is very difficult for the majority of the people to adopt this cashless payment. So I think that's the first thing. It's beyond communication. It's beyond education. I think it is very important to make sure that everyone are using cashless system in order for it to really work.
Yeah, thanks for your response, Ibu Noni. All right, Khairun, how about in Malaysia? Malaysians still like to use cash. How do you educate the customers, or have you seen any change during this COVID-19 period?
Yeah, like interestingly, let's take me as an example. Yeah, I
Yeah.
stopped using cash. I don't have cash at all for the past 6 months. Everything is QR and my debit card. Yeah, so I live with QR and debit card. Yeah, that's me. I try to continue till year end. Yeah, so but looking at the statistics, it's proven that Malaysia started adopting digital payment, of course. Yeah, then when we talk about education, it's not that easy task. Like because
Yes.
different segment when we talk about Gen Y, Gen X, millennial, it's different way to communicate, and it's not that one way fit all. It's never happened. Yeah, Jessica.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In the past, even before joining Standard Chartered, I used to carry a lot of cash, but these days, no, it's all cashless transactions. I guess in Singapore, well, most people, they don't use cash anymore. David, do you want to share, your experience, in terms of, do you still see people using cash frequently these days in Singapore?
Less. I mean, in Singapore, less so. I think you're quite often maybe you're caught out occasionally, and you're like, oh, what you're using. So yes, it's definitely moving towards that. But I think but we're talking about a generation of people who are converted. I still think that we've got to imagine that if we look at the total breadth of consumers, those that were forced into going online through COVID, how do you retain them online, or how do you retain them to be cashless now? And I think that's really the important one, because you don't want people who are procuring online or cashless during the lockdown going back to cash. I mean that's an opportunity missed, I think, for both retailers and banks. And so how do you ensure that you retain them and making it? And again, I think it comes back to a couple of things I mentioned about the communication and the experience. If you can make it easy, first point, and if you can showcase trust, then those elderly, perhaps consumers who were perhaps skeptical about clicking a button and wondering where their money was going, if that can be managed, I think that is that will really be the biggest shift, because I think the younger generation, they were converted. Yeah, I think so. It was more of that. What you really want to accelerate is finish the job. So actually convert those who were the hardest to be converted. They were like my parents would have been the last to have been converted, absolutely the last. But how do you retain them? So in some ways, COVID-19 provided a tremendous opportunity to get cash into the system and out of people's homes and out of people's wallets, which is where you need it. And so I think that's the biggest challenge. And I'll almost say finish the job. So how do you manage the customer experience and the communication to get those who weren't and would never really have gone cashless, keep them cashless? That would be the challenge I would set to retailers and banking institutions.
Yeah. In conclusion, in fact, customer experience is really key. Once you have given them a fabulous customer experience, they will continue with the cashless transaction. Yeah. With that, I would like to pass you over to Uncle to do the closing remarks. Uncle, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. I just want to remind the audience that you can ask a question by just clicking on the Q&A box on the right-hand side. You can ask a question to any of the panelists here. So while we see if there are any further questions, I do want to highlight a couple of points that really stuck with me during the last 40 minutes or so. I think, David, the point that you mentioned on valuing long-term relationships as well as reliability of the ecosystem that you deal with is spot on. In the current crisis, you obviously value relationships and reliability. Those two words really stuck with me. And if you think about our motto in Standard Chartered, here for good, it's exactly trying to hit on that point as well, that we are here for clients, not just during good times, but even during what we are going through right now. The other point, Khairuan, that you spoke about, which is the cross-border instant payment schemes that are coming up, I really feel this is going to be the next wave of innovation. Okay, so in the domestic payment space, we are already seeing a huge amount of innovation because of QRs, because of real-time payments, because of APIs. I almost feel that the next wave of innovation is really going to come from when I can now make a payment to you, Khairuan, sitting in Malaysia on a real-time basis without worrying about any cost, without worrying about any time lag as well, which is really, really exciting. So thank you for sharing that use case. And to make all of this real, Ibu Noni, I think the example that you quoted of Bluebird CAD order delivery is simply exceptional. And it really shows why is it so important for companies to be agile at this point in time, right? And during these sort of times. Also, your agile meme is fantastic. I think that is spot on. It's not just about technology. Technology is an enabler. It's more about changing the mindset. It's more about how do you leverage the technology and achieve far greater heights, just like what you guys are. I want to thank you, all the fellow panelists, for this really insightful discussion. I want to thank all the participants for joining us today as well. We hope that we've addressed some of the doubts that you had on digitization, especially in ASEAN, and I hope you found this session useful. We will have 2 more sessions over the next 2 days, focusing on different industries. So please feel free to join us if you are interested in those industries as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day ahead.